I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Good morning, and thank all of you that are watching live here. This is Comrade Fonton Daniel speaking here from the great state of Texas here in the United States. Today is commemorate Martin Luther King's Day, public holiday here throughout the United States. It is very, very important that we look upon these days with difference on the Southern Cameroon questions. When Dr. Martin Luther King was speaking about the freedom of assembly, freedom of liberty, little do we know that today is going to be a national day of holiday. So the people of Southern Cameroon is not exceptions. They are going through similar crisis in the neighboring country, La Republique du Cameroon. For those of you who are not fully aware of Southern Cameroon, as you see the map and you see the flag, and you see it on the left side of me, there are three key important members of Southern Cameroon. Those are the executive arm of government of the people of Southern Cameroon. You have from my left, immediate left, you have Endele, Dr. Endele. You have second left, Jongu Foncha, Jua, and Estimona. These are the key powerful members of the Southern Cameroon government, executive government. So the people of Southern Cameroon has been deprived of their freedom, their liberty, their own sovereign nations. And this injustice is not something that happens here only in the United States. It still persists, even at this moment that I'm speaking here from the great state of Texas. It still persists, it still continues. One will realize that despite the requests of people asking for freedom and liberty, but that liberty hasn't come in, even in African continent as well. People are still living under colonialism, colonial subjugations, and most especially France. France is the beneficiaries that use every tools they have to suppress the will of the people of Southern Cameroon. So today, as we honor Martin Luther King National Day here in the United States, the people of Southern Cameroon are also honor the liberty that they have been suppressed by neocolonialism. The people of Southern Cameroon was never a conquered territory. You know, when let's look briefly what historically, after the Allied forces defeated Germany, so the territory in Africa were under the control of the Allied forces. You know about the United Nations that was formed in 1945 after they defeated Germans. So the territory that Germans controlled prior to 1945 were placed under the Allied forces. So Southern Cameroon, were under the British Administrating Authority. And you have La Republique du Cameroun, it was under the French, which was also a member of the Allied forces. So, United Nations decided that the territory, that is Article 1514, that those territory that were under the Allied forces and that were placed under the United Nations mandate be given their rightful independence. The people of Southern Cameroon were never given their rightful independence. And if you find out what is the rationale why the people of Southern Cameroon were never given their rightful independence, and yet till today we don't have an answer. And I have a document of the United Nations here with me. The people of Southern Cameroon, United Nations recognize that people have the right. People have the right. Irrespective of when people determine that there is a fundamental violation of their right, their privileges, and they have the right to seek for immediate sovereign nations. We don't fall in that category. We don't fall in that category. We fall under the same category where United Nations recognize that territory that were under the Allied forces be given their rightful independence. So the people of Southern Cameroon should have. Let me read the Article 76 of the United Nations Charter. Let me read the Article 76 of the United Nations Charter. Text Article 76, Section B, promote political, economic, social, educational advancement of the inhabitants of the trust territory and the progressive development towards a self-government or independent as may be appropriate to the particular circumstances of each territory and its people, and freely express their wishes of the people concerned and may provided by the terms of each trustee agreement. This is a United Nations document. So the people of Southern Cameroon has its own government, and that is why I have ended image. I have Jongu Fonja. I have Jua. Those are the three cabinets of the government of Southern Cameroon in respect of Article 76B of the United Nations Charter. The people of Southern Cameroon shouldn't be engaged in any war or any circumstances. The people's sovereignty should have been recognized and respected with dignity. We have lives that have been killed indiscriminately. The world perceive and ignore these fundamental facts and their own document. They choose the wrong to satisfy their own personal egoistic self-interest because they wanted to satisfy their own master planner, France, because of the mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon. That is a top priority for individuals. Nations ignore the fundamental, and that is why France in every aspect block every debate, block every conversation, block every fact related to the Southern Cameroon question to be debated at the United Nations headquarters. Let's read further from the United Nations document. The 7 trustees attend independent. The 7 trust territory attend independence. And those nations that were attend independence, you have Southern Cameroon, you have La Republique du Cameroon, you have Nigeria, you have Nigeria, those are 4, but there's 3 additional nations that fall under this category of Article 1514 XV of the United Nations Charter on Decolonization. The people of Southern Cameroon meet all the required documents as mandated by the United Nations because they have their own government, they have a prime minister, they have a cabinet government, they have assembly, they have everything that require and meet those obligations. And Southern Cameroon, among all those nations listed, Southern Cameroon is more qualified because they have elected prime minister, 3 consecutive democratic institutions, and even Nigeria hasn't a democratic institution. The Republic of Cameroon has no democratic institution. Whereas the people of Southern Cameroon does. Yet, British government, one will expect the British government to have learned a lesson that in United States some 200 years ago advocate that no taxation without a representation, and they stood for those philosophies and advocate for their sovereignty. And if Britain, from 200 years ago, from the example learned from the United States, they will recognize that the people of Southern Cameroon should be a prime example. That did not occur to the British, and even up to now that I'm speaking, it hasn't occurred to the British government to recognize that the people of Southern Cameroon want their sovereignty be recognized and their own sovereign government and self-determination. Why must the people of Southern Cameroon, after they have their own sovereign government, should live under the umbrella of another foreign nation? Because they wanted to satisfy the interests of a foreign nation, France, because of the mineral deposit that is in Southern Cameroon. That is the reason, fellow brothers and sisters, we cannot sit here and watch. We cannot sit here and ignore. We cannot sit here and deny the fact that the interest of a foreign nation is a top priority more than the interest of the people of Southern Cameroon sovereignty. You can understand the former, or of course it's not still former, the Undersecretary for African Affairs, when a lawmaker of the United States, let me see if I can bring out the message. Just hold on. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Don't go away. You know, as I was speaking, I talk about the lawmaker, the U.S. lawmaker asking a valid questions. So let's listen to the U.S. lawmaker asking the U.S. Undersecretary for African Affairs on the question of Southern Cameroon. Let's take a look.
Established some Potemkin institutions. They weren't really doing anything to bring the two sides together. Could you elaborate on that? Because you ran out of time before.
Sure, yes, sir. I understand the Cameroonian government established several commissions, and I'm sorry, I don't know the exact name of it, whether it's the Multicultural Institution for National Reconciliation or something, which on the face of it, and there have been a couple of these, but they have not been provided adequate budget, and they have not really done anything, because what the country needs more than anything else is a genuine, open dialogue, probably to include the diasporas of the Cameroonians, because they have a great deal of interest in this. Because, sir, what's happening, both sides are becoming further and further radicalized. Unfortunately, I believe that the president of Cameroon is being told by his hardliners that he can win this thing militarily. There is no way that they're going to win this militarily. The violence is going to get worse in the northwest and the southwest. The arm for an arm, literally an eye for an eye, and the whole world will be blind there. The violence will spread to the West Province. It may even spread to the Littoral Province, which is the large city of Douala. So there has to be something. We are very, very energetically speaking with our allies. That's why I said that we just had in the Security Council this Monday what the United Nations calls an arias, where it's an open debate, and it's so clear that everybody wants to move forward on this. Are sanctions on the table? Everything's on the table moving forward. But we have to bring this situation to an end. Else, there's a possibility of what happened in Nigeria with Boko Haram. Started as a small movement, and now look at it. And it'd be disastrous for the region if the Cameroonian government turned this thing into yet another type of Boko Haram.
Or Boko Haram could come back into Cameroon. Well, how do you mentioned, that it appears to be spiraling out of control because the more the security forces clamp down, the more resistance there is in the Anglophone region. So what can we do that we're not already doing?
Well, like I said, the best we can do for right now is just work with our allies to really make the Cameroonian government understand the need for a real dialogue.
Let's look. Let's look, and then we'll go back to the message again. Analytical summary of the United Nations. Analytical summary of the United Nations. There were no decisions. Let's look at Article 76B. Question of attainment of the trust territory of self-government or independent application to the trust territory of the declaration of the granting an independence to the colonial countries and the people General Assembly, 1514. That is why you see I am asking Article 1514. That is what the United Nations General Assembly requested. Why is the U.S. Undersecretary playing games? Let's go to the United Nations document that grant. In fact, La Republique article, let me go back. La Republique du Cameroun, Article 1349 X, Article 1349, Section 13. That is what granted La Republique du Cameroun as a sovereign nation. So that should also Article 1608 XV, which is for the Southern Cameroon. So those are trust territory of the United Nations that should have been recognized. Why is the U.S. Undersecretary playing games? Why is the U.S. Undersecretary playing games? Let's go to the fact. Let's look for the document pertaining to La Republique du Cameroun and the document pertaining to the people of Southern Cameroon. And then ask La Republique to pack its luggage and get out of Southern Cameroon. This is the problem, and this is what must be on the table. This is what must be embraced. Let's go to reality. The U.S. Undersecretary don't play politics. Politics is not a question. This is about nation. This is about life. This is about human being. Let fact face the fact. That is what the document requires. Let La Republique get out of Southern Cameroon and leave the people alone. If United States is honest, let's be honest. There's a veracity. Speak the truth. Let not be playing game. That is what I am asking the U.S. Undersecretary. It's a totally failure of the U.S. Undersecretary. Tibunagi. He doesn't understand. A lawmaker asking a valid question. Let's go back to the question again, and then let's complete it. Listen.
And if that doesn't happen relatively quickly, then we have to look at the array of other tools we have in our toolkit, because, frankly, the possibility.
He said, if that doesn't succeed, if mounting pressure doesn't succeed, let's look on what we have on other toolkit. The key is to state clear. Article 1514 XV, let La Republique du Cameroun recognize that document, because Article 1349 recognize the sovereignty of La Republique du Cameroun. If 1349 recognize the sovereignty of La Republique du Cameroun, then 1608 XV recognize the sovereignty of Southern Cameroon. Therefore, ask La Republique du Cameroun to pack its luggage out of Southern Cameroon, get all its colonial counterfeit they have in Southern Cameroon, and get out and let the people begin a new nation building. That is a key factor. That is what U.S. must be standing and speaking. Not telling us, oh, we have other toolkits. Ask La Republique du Cameroun, respect the terms of the United Nations. That is what is causing the war, and that's what this fighting is going on.
The of sanctions is always there, but it's always better to work in concert with our friends before we go in that direction, because
you can understand the language. That's the political language, because they are more interested in France stay in Africa to generate their own resources and benefit the French, and not the indigenous Africans as a whole. Why must the people of Southern Cameroon live under the umbrella of a foreign nation? Because of the mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon. That is what is interest. France, that is all. Nobody can stand and speak the truth. And they block it every aspect of conversation at the United Nations. Therefore, the United Nations doesn't represent Africa as a whole. It represents their own personal interests.
The frustrating thing is it is in the interest of everybody to have a national dialogue. The situation will not end militarily. Each day, the atrocities will get worse and worse.
Is permanent separation of the two regions a possibility?
Sir, I don't believe so, because I think that...
You listen. That is a U.S. lawmaker asking a valid question, and they need a valid answer. What about permanent separation? That is what the U.S. lawmaker asks. And you listen to what the politician will respond. And that is exactly what the politician are interested, because they benefit from the war. He traveled to La Republique du Cameroun and said he was going to come back and bring something. When he came back, he was muted. When Undersecretary returned back from La Republique, he was muted. Just as the subsequent have traveled and came back and muted. But that is a U.S. lawmaker asking a valid question. Let's listen to the message again.
The atrocities will get worse and worse.
Listen.
Permanent separation of the two regions a possibility.
Permanent separation of the two regions. That is a possibility. And you listen to what how he driven the answers. We have lost how many thousand people? We have lost almost 40,000 people killed by the military of La Republique du Cameroun because people turn to abandon what is valid and they choose what is non-valid and they dwell on the non-valid to become a valid. The world community choose a non-valid and dwell on the non-valid and make the non-valid to become a valid document. Whereas the valid document been abandoned. Let's listen again.
The atrocities will get worse and worse.
Is permanent separation of the two regions a possibility?
Sir, I don't believe so because I think that...
That is why he leads a failing policy of the United States in Africa. He leads a failing policy in Africa. The U.S. Undersecretary, the permanent failure policy. I mean, he can read. He can read from the United Nations document. That is the document. I have it here. It's not been discarded. Read. That is what he is leading, a failure foreign policy of the United States. Because they do not want to face the reality. They use the wrong and persuade those wrong to be a valid. And they dwell on those wrong and accept it and assimilate it. That is the world we live in. That is the world we live in. This is the United Nations document. This is it. It says decolonization. It did not ask for partial decolonization. If Southern Cameroon is part of the United Nations Trust territory, then it should be decolonized. It shouldn't be partially decolonized. It should be decolonized, fully decolonized. Like you listen what is going on. Like what is going on? They are playing football, undermine the citizens their right because they are interested. Of course, you see what is going on. What is so-called the African Cup of Nations that is going on right now. They are interested to play the issue, to blindfold the world that there's peace and harmony in Southern Cameroon territory and the World Cup, African Cup of Nations. How many players of Southern Cameroon are enlisted to those games? Of course, you will realize that none are even enlisted. But they're playing dumb. They thought, what do they look Southern Cameroon? Stupid. Anyway. And that is why you can listen to the U.S. lawmaker asking a fundamental valid questions. What about permanent suppression? And you listen to the U.S. politicians, the undersecretary, that I don't believe so. You know, what don't you don't believe? Do you read? Do you read? Let's listen back to that message again. Let's.
The two regions a possibility.
Sir, I don't believe so because I think that most the atrocities will get worse and worse.
Is permanent separation of the two regions a possibility?
Sir, I don't believe so because I think that
permanent separation of the two regions. That is the U.S. lawmaker asking a fundamental, valid questions. I need a valid answer. And then you see a politician playing all over the games. And that is why the lives of people of Southern Cameroon are being dedicated for killing by the neighboring nation, La Republique du Cameroun, that they have their own sovereignty. But the world are more interested on Southern Cameroon because the mineral deposit, that is a priority for the French government rather than the indigenous people of Southern Cameroon. Massive killing. They do not even consider that the 180,000 citizens of Southern Cameroon that have been languishing in Nigeria, when they have their own land, they should have been living there happily. But they have foreign occupier, the governor, French colonial masters that masterminded the liberty of the people of Southern Cameroon. In the presence of this world peace, we have a destructive leaders that are leading this world, and that we have no value, and especially African descent.
America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. And I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
The people of Southern Cameroon is not exception from those who are fighting for liberty and freedom. You can listen to the heart of Martin Luther King's voice. And the people of Southern Cameroon is not exceptions. We have our people that are suffering. We have at least 100,000 of people of Southern Cameroon that are languishing in Nigeria. They are languishing in Nigeria because of the injustice that is being imposed upon the people of Southern Cameroon, because they look upon France, the key architects of engineering, the atrocity in Africa. A valid document. You all listened to the message that I just discussed a few seconds ago. That was the U.S. Undersecretary. And in the asking a U.S. lawmaker, there is fundamental distinction between a lawmaker that making the law that become the law of this great nation, the United States. And he is asking a politician, executive branch of the government, a fundamental question. What about the permanent separation? you see the politician, instead of answering the valid question, because what erupted in Southern Cameroon is because of deviating from the fundamental question. Why were the people of Southern Cameroon that they have their own nation, but the British government choose La Republique du Cameroun to control the aspect of a nation that they did not have any relationship with the British government? During the Colonial Administrating Authority, the people of Southern Cameroon did not have, La Republique du Cameroun did not have any relationship with La Republique du Cameroun. Why in the end, the valid La Republique du Cameroun over the people of Southern Cameroon that they have their own self-government, have self-identity. And today, people, the world still continue in that validated wrong, validating wrong on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon. Why they're asking the permanent separation? Those are two separate legal entities. Article 1349. Article 1349. That is the United Nations legal document that guaranteed the independence of La Republique in 1960, which became effectively January 1st, 1960. La Republique assumed its independence as a sovereign nation. And if Southern Cameroon was not part of the legal document of 1960 when La Republique du Cameroun was recognized by the United Nations, then why should they place La Republique du Cameroun to control the people of Southern Cameroon? Is that not violate the same law issued by the United Nations? Why is the law being selectively applied to a certain selected group and ignore the fundamental questions of others? Is it because they have no voice, they have no value, they can't represent their own people? And that is what we brought us to this crisis that we are facing. Selectively apply because of their personal egoistic interests. Ignore the fundamental question whether the people of Southern Cameroon deserve their own self-determination. In fact, La Republique did not exhibit the exemplary government of Southern Cameroon. They have not met even criteria of a self-determination nation. La Republique did not meet any of those criteria. They have no democratic institutions. They have no prior experience. It's France. UPC would have been a legal political party that would have been in La Republique du Cameroun. But unfortunately, that did not happen. Because France carried on its guillotine of the Bassas, the Bamilekes. Because they did not want the freedom. And so that same policy now has been extended to Southern Cameroon. They persuaded the British Administrating Authority to discard the sovereign government of Southern Cameroon. Today, we are having this nightmare of experience. Why is it selective application? Selective application. Respect the normal norms. Instead, choose the wrong. Dwell on the wrong. Acted on the wrong and assimilate the wrong and perceive to be the reality. That is the world we live in. That is the world we live in. And that was the injustice Martin Luther King was fighting. People dwell on the wrong. Promulgate the wrong. Assimilate the wrong and accept it as a reality. That is what it is. But the fact is the legal document, which is specified. Article 76B qualify for the attainment of a trust territory of self-government and independence. We have this self-government. We met all the criteria. We have a prime minister, we have an elected. Nigeria never exhibited all those behavior. Nigeria, at the time, we had an elected government, elected officials. Nigeria did not meet all those criteria. La Republique du Cameroun never meet those criteria. Do you know why? One of the systematic failure of the U.K. government? Because they failed to establish the defense force of Southern Cameroon. They were two nightmares. They were supposed to establish because the United Nations had prepared them to their immediate independence. So why did the British government not institute a military force in Southern Cameroon? If they were to respect the mandate of the United Nations that prepared them for immediate independence, because they felt that they're going to protect the people of Southern Cameroon by using their defense force. So they introduced the police force and ignored the Southern Cameroon defense force to be trained for their immediate independence. That is the experience. The nightmare the people of Southern Cameroon are going through this hell because of the systematic failure of injustice instituted by the UK government. Let's listen to one of a reporter, one of UK member of parliament. Let's listen.
"7,000 refugees from Cameroon registered with the UNHCR. Thousands more have been forced to flee their homes, and dozens of villages have been ethnically cleansed. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and High Commissioner for Refugees, 437,000 from the Anglophone regions have been displaced, whilst the charity Protection Approaches says that 3.3 million are in need of humanitarian assistance. Amnesty reports that 450 to 500 civilians and 185 members of the security services have been killed. UNICEF estimates that 58 schools have been destroyed, 47 political leaders are being held without charge, and a recent Amnesty report refers to, and I quote, arbitrary arrests, torture, unlawful killings and the destruction of property. The Catholic Bishops' Conference has called it, quote, inhuman, blind, monstrous violence. And of the October election, Archbishop Samuel Cleda, the president of the Bishops' Conference, says, one has the impression election results are decided before voting takes place. My lords, we can all share in these horrendous statistics, but what I want to do is this evening focus on what conclusions we can draw from the United Kingdom's dismal approach to this situation. More than ever, with Britain's potential departure from the European Union, we must seek to define our role in the world, and it would be helpful to know from the Noble Baroness the Minister whether, for instance, human rights issues were assessed before, for instance, the New Age natural gas deal was announced, what consideration has been given to targeted sanctions, and whether this crisis figures in the Foreign Secretary's recent commitment on atrocity prevention. My lords, the government mustn't suggest that this is a level playing field conflict in a civil war between equal sides. Too often in the past, in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Darfur, the United Kingdom chose the path of moral equivalence, hinting that both sides were as bad as each other is the easy way out. In a previous generation, this was known as appeasement. Moral equivalence signals that we cannot be expected to pass judgment on which side is more to blame for the conflict. Instead, we issue the usual calls for a cessation of violence and a negotiated settlement, or we frame political conflicts as if they were natural disasters requiring aid, and we're very generous at sending aid rather than political solutions. At its worst, in Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur, we have portrayed the persecution of unarmed civilians by repressive governments as a result of ancient ethnic hatreds, thereby dehumanising the victims and denying the legitimacy of the protesters who yearn for the rights that we take for granted. By citing ancient ethnic hatreds, we absolve ourselves of the obligation under international law to stop the killing. It's also disingenuous to defend our tepid response by claiming that the circumstances present us with a simple binary choice between wringing our hands in dismay or putting British boots on the ground. This is to ignore the potential for soft power available to the international community, be it concerted and sustained diplomatic pressure, carefully targeted sanctions, or international justice. The grievances fueling the violence in Cameroon did not erupt overnight. We had plenty of warning, but we chose not to listen to Cameroon's Anglophone minority. Anglophones represent 20% of the population, but for years there was only one Anglophone member of the 36-person cabinet in Yaoundé, just one example of their systematic marginalisation. My lords, we shouldn't underestimate the influence we have, but it speaks volumes that we left it to the American ambassador to express his disapproval of the Cameroonian government's brutal response to peaceful protests. For decades, the Francophone government has ignored the pleas of moderate representatives of civil society, such as church leaders. Calls for a federal solution were ignored by President Biya 36 years in power, fueling the calls for secession and thereby polarising opinion. Breaking point came when the Francophone government sought to impose French laws in the French language in Anglophone courts and sent Francophone teachers speaking French into English schools. They responded to peaceful protest with disproportionate force. The International Crisis Group reports that a government helicopter, for instance, hovered outside a church, shooting Anglophone worshippers as they emerged from Mass. Inevitably, disproportionate actions led to the current escalation. In the face of all this, my lords, there is nothing admirable about being even-handed in the face of the suffering of the Anglophone community. The United Kingdom should support the Anglophone community's peaceful civil society leaders in seeking genuine and inclusive talks. We need a targeted strategy for atrocity prevention and, my lords, a commitment to bring to justice those responsible for human rights violations wherever they occur.
To say it on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
The right to protest. That is Martin Luther King speaking. The right to protest. The people of Southern Cameroon did not go far. The people of Southern Cameroon in 2016, when the same civil society in La Republique du Cameroon, when the Justice Department has been replaced by a French-speaking Francophones, when hospitals, doctors being replaced by a Francophone in Southern Cameroon, where you have doctors of Southern Cameroon descent. Divisional officers are all Francophones. Governors are all Francophones. As I'm speaking, they are all Francophone in Southern Cameroon territory. A Southern Cameroon, a nation with its own sovereign government, being immediately replaced. In France, the French La Republique President Paul Biya, in an open meetings, and he said he has tried to assimilate the people of Southern Cameroon, and he hasn't succeeded. And today, our people are being killed like animals, guinea pig. So today is Martin Luther King. It's a reflection for all of us Africa to find out what do we have to. Because when we have the French, we allow them to control our way of life. We are heading to the wrong side of the game. But let France control its colonial territory and lead the people of Southern Cameroon, because we are not used to those subjugation colonialism. We believe in liberty. We believe in freedom. And that is why we asking France to leave Southern Cameroon territory. Let them concentrate in their French colonial territory and let La Republique leave Southern Cameroon completely. We have got enough of this. This is a United Nations document. Let me read it. Let me read from the United Nations document. This is a legal document. Termination of the trustee agreement. The termination of the trustee agreement with regard of Cameroon under the French Administrating Authority is specified with regard to the French Administrating Authority. It did not say Southern Cameroon. It did not say Southern Cameroon. So Southern Cameroon has its own territorial integrity under the French. As recorded in the previous study, the General Assembly by Resolution 1349 X13. That's the document. What created Southern Cameroon is 1608, whereas what created La Republique du Cameroun is 1349. Having noted with satisfaction adoption by the Legislative Assembly, the adoption by the Legislative Assembly of Cameroon of the amnesty law of 14 February 1959, and having been informed by the Prime Minister of the Cameroon that this government had issued a decree fixing 12 April 1959 as the date of election to be held to fill the 4th seat in the Legislative Assembly allocated to the Sananga Maritime. Did it ever took place? Listen. As well as 2 vacant seats in the Bois subdivision resolved in agreement with the administrative authority that on January 1, 1960, when the Cameroon under the French administration became independent, that is the United Nations Resolution 1349 that granted La Republique du Cameroon as a sovereign nation. It did not include Southern Cameroon territory. So why is the world blind? Why is the world blind? The world is blind because they do not want to accept the truth. That the agreement authority that on January 1st, 1960, when Cameroon under the French administration became independent, is specified and is clearly stated. The trustee agreement approved by the General Assembly on the 13th December 1949 should cease to be in force in accordance with Article 76B. So, according to Article 76B, that Article 1514, Part 76B, that the territory that belongs to the colonial, which is France, should be decolonized. So La Republique du Cameroun was decolonized even though France maintained supremacy. The General Assembly further expressed confidence that at the earliest possible date after the attainment of independence, elections would be held for the formation of a new assembly, and which would take a decision regarding the establishment in their final form of institution of free and independent Cameroon. Do you listen? France never allowed this to happen, and that is why they chased out the UPC. They chased out the UPC in Douala. They banned UPC because they were following this resolution of the United Nations. Listen again. At the 14th session of the representative of the administrative authority informed the 4th committee that the local election in the Sananga Maritime and the Bois subdivision has been duly held on the 12th of April 1959. If that was held, why was there a guillotine? Because France did not perceive the purpose in which they were advocating. Why would France institute a guillotine in La Republique du Cameroun? At the same session, several members have requested that the further territory be reconsidered and that the subcommittee drafted a resolution whereby, among other things, the General Assembly would note that the unfavorable condition prevailing in the territory appear to concern to by the end of the common effort. The unfavorable conditions noted by the statement of the Prime Minister of Cameroon that the election would be held at the beginning of 1960, and that this election would be free and democratic. Was it free and democratic? No, it was never free and democratic. Because France, why was France engaged in that moment of a guillotine in La Republique du Cameroun? And this election will be free and democratic and recommend the fundamental right laid down in the Charter, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, should be respected in order to establish full and free democratic political activities in the territory. Free and fair democratic institutions. Was that ever instituted? Southern Cameroon does. Southern Cameroon does. Southern Cameroon has 3 elected executives. Ndele, Jongu Foncha, Ngumjua. Those are the demonstrate with this respect to this United Nations declaration that I am reading. Southern Cameroon fulfilled those conditions, but La Republique du Cameroon never fulfilled any of those conditions. They never. And up to date, they have never changed power. Since its independence, La Republique du Cameroon has never changed leadership in a democratic institution. They have never. From brutal Amadou Ahidjo for 25 years to the current brutal dictatorship for 38 years. Is that what the U.S. Undersecretary is advocating? Is that what the U.S. Undersecretary is advocating? I am deeply amazed how he will shut the U.S. lawmakers in respect to the Southern Cameroon questions. Let's read further. Let's read further. By the same draft resolution assembly, it would also reaffirm resolution 1349. 1349 is the resolution of the United Nations that granted La Republique du Cameroun as a nation. Just like resolution 1608 XV of the Southern Cameroon. Let's stay tuned. Request that the government of Cameroon be implement its provisions and recommend that a commission of 3 members appointed by the President of the General Assembly by immediate dispatch to the territory to assist the government and people of Cameroon to achieve before the date of independence. The purpose of the resolution 1349 and the resolution under consideration so that the territory would be acceded to independence in an atmosphere of peace and harmony. Did they fulfill all those conditions as laid down by the United Nations resolution 1315, 1349? Did La Republique make all those resolutions? He did not. So France was interested in chasing out UPC political party because they knew the purpose in which the political party of the UPC were advocating. If La Republique never fulfilled those conditions, why do they think that the people of Southern Cameroon should be under the umbrella of a dictator regime? You know why? The mineral deposit in Southern Cameroon. Stay tuned. Do not go away.
And so just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody.
The people of Southern Cameroon, as you listen from the message of Dr. Martin Luther King, we stand determined that we are for our sovereignty that has been deprived and imposed a foreign nation because they wanted to satisfy the interests of a foreign nation, France, on behalf of the people of Southern Cameroon. Ignore the fundamental resolution written by State, and that is why the U.S. Undersecretary is enforcing a wrong. We are here asking respect the written document and ask La Republique du Cameroon to leave Southern Cameroon territory and let the people of Southern Cameroon rebuild what they have lost for the past 56 years. It's not too late. You can imagine that the President of the United States sent 10 million US dollar. Imagine 10 million US dollar to Prime Minister Foncha to revamp the education system in Southern Cameroon. Ahidjo took that money and pocketed them, and no education system has ever revamped in Southern Cameroon. One of the primary projects of John Foncha was to revamp the Ombe Technical College to a full-fledged university. That did never materialize. That 10 million, imagine 10 million. That 10 million was given to India. Today, India is proud of world scientists and doctors. But the people of Southern Cameroon never proud of the 10 million allocated by the United States President. La Republique only those monies and mismanaged it. Despite the priority of John Foncha, that money was to be allocated for Southern Cameroon. We are done with this relationship. We are done. We are free. We must move forward. We are asking the current U.S. administration recognize the people of Southern Cameroon, their distinctive sovereignty, and let La Republique leave. That is all we want.
I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Most Cameroonians, including in the Southwest and Northwest, have a sense of Cameroonianness and the concept of a separated, what they call
You can listen to the U.S. Undersecretary saying the people of Southern Cameroon have the tendency of Cameroonness. Is that not disgusting? It's absolutely disgusting to listen to the U.S. Undersecretary despite the demonstration here in the United States and elsewhere. I'm sure he's blindfolded, to be honest. He will stand, and despite the demonstration here in the United States and elsewhere around the world, the people of Southern Cameroon demonstrate. He says we have the tendency of Cameroonness. I am deeply opposed to the U.S. Undersecretary, who is completely blind and misleading policy that never materializes. We have a sense of Cameroonness. We do not, Mr. Secretary, we do not have any sense of Cameroonness.
What can we do that we're not already doing?
Well,
that is a U.S. lawmaker. What can we do that we are not already doing? That is a valid question, need a valid answer. And then listen to the U.S. Undersecretary, the politician. That is the politician. Listen to the politician.
well, like I said, the best we can do for right now is just work with our allies to really make the Cameroonian government understand the need for a real dialogue. And if that doesn't happen relatively quickly, then we have to look at the array of other tools we have in our toolkit.
The array of other tools we have in our toolkit. Let's look at the document. This is the United Nations resolution document. Let's go there and look Article 1514, Article 1314, 1349. 1349 is related to La Republique du Cameroun. Their sovereignty was granted. Southern Cameroon was not part of 1349 resolution of the United Nations. So therefore, it's to visit the document and ask La Republique. I mean, when you attend the law, the court, they walk by law, walk by resolution. That is what the law says. They sentence you because you violate the law. This is the legal document of the world. And if it is the legal document of the world, let's go back there and look whether does La Republique du Cameroun have a merit in Southern Cameroon. That is a simple fact. Why is U.S. Undersecretary blindfolded? Why? This is a legal document. This is the United Nations. Let's look at the terms of the document and let's review it. Does La Republique have a priority in Southern Cameroon? If that is true, and then let them pack their luggage and leave Southern Cameroon, and so we start from scratch. It's not too late for the people of Southern Cameroon, Mr. Undersecretary.
Because, frankly, the possibility of sanctions is always there. But it's always better to work in concert with our friends before we go in that direction. Because the frustrating thing is it is in the interest of everybody to have a national dialogue. The situation will not end militarily. Each day, the atrocities will get worse and worse.
Is permanent separation of the two.
Permanent separation. Permanent separation. Oh my God. Permanent separation. That is the U.S. lawmaker asking a valid question. What is wrong with these politicians? What is wrong? Permanent separation. And listen to, wait, don't go away. Listen to what he said. Listen.
Regions a possibility.
Sir, I don't believe so because I think that most Cameroonians, including in the southwest and northwest, have a sense of Cameroonian.
You hear him, politician, his opinion. Now he goes on opinion. A lawmaker asking a fundamental valid question, which is what brought this crisis in the first place. And you listen. He used his opinion that he believes in the people of Southern Cameroon has a sense of Cameroonness. Really, Mr. Undersecretary, what a disgraceful. We do not have any sense of Cameroonness, Mr. Undersecretary. We do not. We do not. We do not have any sense. The demonstration here in the United States would have proved to you. Demonstration in UK would have proved for you. Demonstration in France would have proved for you. And demonstration in Southern Cameroon also would have proved to you that we have a sense of Cameroonness. Where did you get that philosophy? Let's go back to the United Nations document.
To America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
The right to protest. The right to protest. That was Dr. Martin Luther King. The right to protest. But the people of Southern Cameroon protest and they're being held in La Republique jail. Does La Republique have any right over the people of Southern Cameroon? If that is right, that people have the right to protest, that is citizens of Southern Cameroon that have been deprived by a foreign nation, that were imposed upon the people of Southern Cameroon by the neocolonialism, the British government and the French, because of their own primary interests, rather than the interests of the people of Southern Cameroon, despite the fact that the document called for decolonization. But the interest of the people, when they see their system being discarded by a neocolonialism, La Republique du Cameroun, replace every aspect of life of the people of Southern Cameroon with the neocolonialism, the French system. Maybe the right to protest. The right to protest.
And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now.
The people of Southern Cameroon. The people of Southern Cameroon is not different from this. The termination of the trustee agreement with regard to Cameroon under the United Kingdom Administrating Authority. The termination of the trustee agreement with regard to the Cameroon under the United Kingdom Administrating Authority. And the UK Member of Parliament is asking, why were they given two options for the people of Southern Cameroon? Why did the British government formulate two options? Option 1 to join La Republique and option 2 to join this disgruntled La Republique du Cameroun. Why were they given two options? That is a member of the UK Parliament asking a valid question, just as the United States elected officials asking a valid question. Why are the politicians deviating from the key aspect of the factor? Let's listen. The General Assembly in Resolution 1350 X13 recommend that a separate plebiscite should be held under the supervision of the United Nations in the north and the south part of Cameroon under the United Kingdom administration as stated the wishes of the inhabitants concerning the future. It recommended that the plebiscite in the north part should take place in November 1959. That's the north region. And that the following question be put to the people. A. Do you wish Northern Cameroon to be part of northern region of Nigeria when the Federation of Nigeria become independent? That is the north part. And or are you in favor of deciding the future of the Northern Cameroon at the later date? That is the northern. 84, section 84. With respect to the southern part of the territory of assembly, recommend that the plebiscite should be held during the next dry season between the beginning of December 1959 and the end of April 1960. That is the period that was given to the people of Southern Cameroon. It decided, however, that the alternative be put to the people and the qualification for the voting should be considered at its 14th session, and hope that all the concerned in the territory would try to reach an agreement on those questions before that session. Do you get it? Do you get it? A plebiscite in the north part of Cameroon currently took place under the supervision of the United Nations on 7th November 1959. The United Nations Plebiscite Commissioner report to the Trustee Council at the 10th session that almost 88% of the registered voters had voted, and that all of the 62% were in favor of deciding the future of the Northern Cameroon at a later date. Listen, the commissioner stated that he was satisfied that the plebiscite has been conducted by the administering authority with efficiency and impartiality and had been held in atmosphere of freedom. He also commented that it would appear that the majority of the voters has made use of opportunity afforded by the plebiscite to register what was in effect a protest vote against the system of local administering prevailing in the North Cameroon. The Trustee Council, by Resolution 2007, decided to forward the report to the General Assembly. This is in the North. 86, Section 86. At the 14th session of the General Assembly, 4th Committee unanimously approved that the General Assembly unanimously adopted Resolution 1473 X14 concerning the Northern Cameroon. By that resolution, the Assembly recommend that the pursuant of Article 76B of the Charter, in consultation with the United Nations Plebiscite Commissioner, that the administrative authority organize United Nations supervision a further plebiscite in the North Cameroon. The arrangement for this, which should begin on the 30th of September 1960, and the plebiscite should be concluded no later than March 1961. It was decided that 2 questions to be put at the plebiscite should be: do you wish to achieve independence by joining the Independent Republic of Cameroon? Or do you wish to achieve independence by joining the Independent Federation of Nigeria? Just imagine the people of Southern Cameroon. That is why the British member of parliament asking why did they choose 2 options. If Southern Cameroon has its own prime minister, 3 executive prime ministers from Endele, Fonja, and Joa, has 3 executive cabinet, why did the British and they think that they people should be dissolved and be run by Nigeria or La Republique du Cameroon, when they have a more democratic sound institution more than La Republique du Cameroon and the Nigeria as a whole? They have a cabinet, they have a prime minister elected duly by the people, but they consider them not valid, but they consider oh, God help this world. Let them come to reasoning. Okay. The Assembly recommend that the plebiscite be conducted on the basis of universal adult plebiscite, be conducted on the basis of adult suffrage. And those who are the age of 21 and ordinary resident in the Northern Cameroon being qualified to vote. It requested that the United Nations Plebiscite Commissioner to report to the Trustee Council on the organization and conduct the result of the plebiscite order, and the Council might transmit its report to the General Assembly together and recommended an observation considered necessary. Now, let's go to 87. 87. The General Assembly recommend that the necessary measures should be taken without any delay for the further decentralization of governmental functions and the effect of decentralization of the system of local government in the north part of the trustee territory and that of the administering authority should initiate without delay a separation of the administering of the Northern Cameroon from that of Nigeria, with the process to be completed by October 1, 1960. The Assembly requests that the administrative authority to report the process of separation Trustee Council at its 26th session and request that the committee to submit a report on the matters to the General Assembly and its 14th session. Section 88. Finally, the Assembly declared that the participation of Northern in the election to the Federal Legislative Assembly of Nigeria should be no more interfere with the influence of their free choice in a way interfere with the influence of free choice of the people of the North and deciding their future in a forthcoming plebiscite. It specifies what the northern part of Nigeria should, the part that voted to join Nigeria, they should have a certain liberty and freedom, and they should that be specified. And Nigeria hasn't violated any of those. 88. Finally, the Assembly declared the participation of Northern Cameroon. 89. With regard to the Southern Cameroon statement made in the fourth committee by the representative of the Administrating Authority and by the Premier of the Southern Cameroon. Do you get it? With regard to the Southern Cameroon, regard to the fourth committee, representative of the Administrating Authority, and by the Premier of the Southern Cameroon, the Prime Minister of Southern Cameroon.
I just want to do God.
I switched from State Farm.
On the 7th of June this year, the Guardian newspaper ran a special feature on the brutal campaign of violence by the regime of Cameroon's President Biya against English-speaking communities in the west of the country, which were formerly known as British Cameroun, communities to whom we owe a historic responsibility. They quoted in The Guardian the ordinary men and women who saw their villages attacked by Biya's military, who saw their neighbours and families members killed, and that they were forced to flee for their lives. They quoted the charity workers who were looking after thousands of displaced women and children for whom they warned going home would be suicide. Now, by any normal moral standard, you would expect the UK government to read those reports and be appalled. But not this government. The very next day, after that report was published, the British Trade Secretary announced a £1.5 billion deal with a British national gas company and President Biya's regime. A deal which, in the words of the Trade Department's press release, will, quote, generate a huge stream of revenue for Cameroon's public treasury. In other words, we have a regime ranked as the 25th most corrupt in the world, a ruler in his 43rd year of autocratic power, with a personal wealth of over $200 million, engaged in a systematic campaign of brutality and killings against English-speaking community in his country, and all the government can do is boast of doing trade deals which will only enrich him further. That, in my mind, is what this government means by global Britain.
Because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that.
Somewhere I read. That's the message to resonate. Somewhere I read. That is where somewhere I read about the people of Southern Cameroon. Somewhere I read the Martin Luther King echo his message. The people of Southern Cameroon. Let's look with regard to the Southern Cameroon state, made in the fourth committee representative of the administrative authority by the premier, the prime minister. That is what they mean by the premier, the prime minister, the head of government of Southern Cameroon. Remember, the northern part did not have a prime minister, did not have a head of government, but the people of Southern Cameroon has a well-organized governmental system, whereas the north did not. The people of Southern Cameroon did. And that is why they said the head of the Southern Cameroon Premier, Southern Cameroon, J.N. Foncha, and the leaders of the opposition in Southern Cameroon House of Assembly, Dr. E.M. Endel. So, Prime Minister Jongu Foncha, leader of the opposition House of Assembly, E.M. Endel, who at the same time was the former Prime Minister. Now he is the Speaker of the House of Assembly. Why did the people of Southern Cameroon deprive of this fundamental value? Okay. And then indicate that the parties concerned has not been able to reach an agreement on the alternative to put in place in plebiscite on the qualification of the voting. That the Premier and his party wanted the Southern Cameroon to be separate from the Federation of Nigeria and further of the territory to determine later date. Furthermore, they maintained that only a native-born inhabitant should be part of the plebiscite. But the leaders of the opposition party considered the choice should be between the continuous and the autonomous. The leader of the opposition should continue autonomous self-governing region, independent. Why did the UK government fail the people of Southern Cameroon? Somewhere I read,
the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around.
And the concept of a separated, what they call Ambazonia, in my view, is not realistic. It is the view of the United States of America to recognize the integrity of the country.
You hear the politicians, because they don't follow the truth. They choose the wrong, dwell on the wrong, maintain the wrong, and express it as the reality. That is what we have. That is what you have. Southern Cameroon. Let's go and look. Let's look at the document pertain to. So why should it be selectively? Why should it be selectively application? Selectively application. This is what it requires for the people of Southern Cameroon. Let's look at the document and let Latpoli pack its luggage and leave Southern Cameroon and let the people begin where they left. So I want to thank you for watching.
You want to know why running on the treadmill 7 days a week doesn't work for you when you're trying to lose weight? Because it never has. And I know that's hard.
Cameroun.
Got it. Thank you very much. Oh, you're back.
or any totalitarian country. Maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop.